Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor video to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings from our past couple of days, some interesting news updates, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Sharks, Leafs, Blues, and Kraken. We'll go to all those updates from our past couple of days coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, do not forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, we've got a very interesting one here, another news and rumor video. We're going to start off as we usually do. We're talking about some signings. There were 5 signings I want to touch on here today from the 13th and the 14th, so a couple of very interesting signings. Most of these guys are AHL level players, but I'll touch on all of these guys here. So first, on July 13th, we saw one signing. It was in Tampa Bay, as they have signed UFA Scott Sabourin to a 1-year league minimum deal. Sabourin has NHL experience with San Jose, I think a couple of years ago, had some with Ottawa. I think he might have even played for Nashville a couple of years ago, but has been mostly an AHL level player throughout his entire career, so I expect him to be an AHL level guy this upcoming season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Could potentially be a call-up option, maybe get some first line minutes at some points during the season, but I think it's a solid pickup there for Tampa as they get Sabourin on the 13th, so very interesting note there. And then we saw 4 players be signed on the 14th. First was Jack Thompson. He signed a 1-year $800,000 deal in San Jose. He was one of the remaining RFAs the San Jose Sharks had on their team, so this is a pretty solid sign there. Thompson last year got some NHL minutes, putting up 4 goals and 10 points in 31 games. It was one of the pieces that the San Jose Sharks got a couple of years ago in a trade with Tampa. So I think this is a really good pickup here for the San Jose Sharks, getting Jack Thompson signed. And while he's either going to be starting at the AHL level, could be a spare, could see him get NHL level minutes, especially if the Sharks run into some injuries. That's a solid sign there in my opinion. 1 year, $800,000, just not overly bad there for the Sharks. Then we saw New York Islanders sign an ELC for one of their first round picks from this past year, and that was Victor Eklund. Eklund is a 3-year ELC, AAV of $975,000. Eklund was the 16th overall pick in this past year's draft. He was acquired by the New York Islanders in the draft with one of the picks that the Islanders got in the Noah Dobson deal. Eklund long-term I think has the potential to be a top 6 goal scorer, is one of the top 4 prospects in the Islanders organization, and I do think long-term has the potential to be a solid 30, maybe even 40 goal scorer. So I think it was a solid pickup here at 16th for the Islanders, who got him after I think he fell a little bit. And I do like this contract here, and I don't think he'll start at NHL level this year, but I do think at very least next year, if not the year after, the Islanders could wind up having him at the NHL level, so very interesting note there. But the Islanders do sign Victor Eklund to a 3-year ELC. The Islanders also signed one of their younger players in Travis Mitchell, RFA, 25 years old, right shot defenseman, gets a 1-year league minimum deal. Not a bad deal there for the Islanders, because I do think Mitchell long-term could potentially be like a 6-7 defenseman. He'll most likely be an AHL level guy for this upcoming season, but it's a solid pickup there for the Islanders as they do add some more defensive depth by getting Travis Mitchell. And then the Carolina Hurricanes also brought back Rob Brindamore's kid Skylar Brindamore on a 1-year league minimum deal. Not a bad deal there for the Carolina Hurricanes. Brindamore I think eventually could be a solid bottom 6 forward in the Carolina Hurricanes organization. Will most likely be an AHL player again this year, but I do think in time Brindamore could be a decent bottom 6 guy, so 1-year league minimum for an AHL guy who could potentially be a call-up option. Not a bad option there for the Carolina Hurricanes to sign Brindamore to an extension, so very interesting note there. But the Hurricanes signed Brindamore, the Islanders signed Mitchell and Eklund to an ELC, the Sharks signed Thompson, and the Bolts signed Sabourin. So some very interesting signings, mostly low-end ones, but very interesting signings from our past couple of days. And next, going over here to a couple of quick news updates. First, when it comes to players signing overseas, Filip Zadina has re-signed the SHL. He left the NHL, it was either a year or 2 ago, to go play over in the SHL. He's apparently re-signed for 2 more seasons, so Filip Zadina, who at one point was a top 10 pick a couple of years back in the draft, is still going to be playing overseas. Kyrou Bellows, who played last year in Nashville, is also heading back to overseas, so he's been mostly AHL level forward over the past couple of years. Another high first-round pick who never really panned out at the NHL level, and he's also going overseas. He's going to the SHL. Daniel Sprong, who's currently still a UFA, is drawing interest from some KHL teams, so if Sprong is not able to get some sort of an NHL role, last year didn't do overly great playing in Detroit, Seattle, Vancouver, Vancouver. Lots of teams he played for last year never really worked out, so if he's not getting an NHL opportunity next year, I definitely think there's a possibility we could see Sprong head to the KHL. So very interesting note there. But Zadina's back in the SHL, Bellows is going to the SHL, and Sprong could go to the KHL, so very interesting note there. But we also saw a couple of AHL guys get some new contracts, as Desnoyers signs in Iowa and Bailey signs in San Diego. These aren't NHL deals, these are AHL level deals, so they can only play the AHL level. But Bailey, who last year split time between San Jose and Anaheim, mostly AHL level guy, and Desnoyers, who was an AHL level guy for the Philadelphia Flyers, both aren't able to get NHL contracts, so they signed the AHL with the Minnesota and Anaheim AHL affiliates, and we'll see how they do at the AHL level, but some more interesting signings. We also heard that Alex Ovechkin could play beyond next year. There's a lot of talk earlier after this past season concluded that Alex Ovechkin was probably going to be entering the final year of his contract, was probably not going to be able to play beyond this year. This might be his last contract, and apparently, according to some recent reports, I think even Ovechkin said this, he's not guaranteeing that this is going to be his last season at the NHL level. There's a possibility out there he could sign maybe like another 1 to 2 year deal after this offseason to remain at the NHL level. There's also still a very likely possibility he'll go over to the KHL and call it quits at the NHL level. That's still a very likely possibility, but do not guarantee that this is going to be Ovechkin's final season, as according to some recent reports, there is still some speculation out there that Ovechkin could play another season beyond this one, so we'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to Philadelphia Flyers, they've hired Snowden as their AHL head coach. So Snowden had been in the Flyers organization over the past little while as an AHL assistant coach. He's a solid coach. He's been in the AHL, ECHL over the past couple of seasons, had some really solid head coaching opportunities. This is going to be his first stint, I think, at the AHL level as a head coach. So I've heard about Peterson, Dallas, and some other guys being named head coaches at the AHL level over the past little while, and now Snowden's new head coach in Philadelphia. So a very interesting note there, but Snowden will be the new AHL head coach for the Philadelphia Flyers AHL affiliates. So those are all the updates from our past couple of days. As Bellows, Zadina has signed the SHL, Sprong could go to the KHL, Desnoyers in Iowa, Bailey's in San Diego, Ovechkin could play beyond this upcoming season, and Snowden is the new AHL head coach in Philadelphia. So very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So when it comes to trade rumors, we've got a couple of things to talk about here. First, when it comes to David Pagnotta, he was mentioning that the San Jose Sharks could try and package Mario Ferraro with a couple of other things to try and get some forward help. But he says this might be a deal that happens closer to the deadline. Now, I talked about this in a previous video about how Pagnotta mentioned that Mario Ferraro could be dealt to try and get the San Jose Sharks some forward upgrades. Now, since that deal did happen, the San Jose Sharks have signed Jeff Skinner, which I think does really help that forward group, and they also have since moved Henry Thrun to sort of alleviate the logjam on the blue line. So it sounds like the San Jose Sharks are probably done with the moves unless there's something big that happens. But it sounds like Ferraro is still a very good chance to get dealt. He's entering the final year for his deal. Might be a very hot commodity come the trade deadline that he wound up getting dealt. He's making a $3.25 million cap hit. Entering the final year of his deal, he could help a lot of teams on like the third, second pair who are going for playoff runs. So I definitely think it might make a lot more sense at this point in time to wait closer till the deadline when he might have a lot more value. And if the Sharks are able to get some sort of a forward help, like maybe a younger forward who can play top 9 minutes long term, who's on the younger side of things, who they can move Ferraro for at the trade deadline, I think that would make a lot of sense. But it does sound like it's going to be more of a deadline move now instead of something that's going to happen in the next couple of months leading into the start of the season. So keep your eye on Mario Ferraro. I think he's going to be a very interesting name to watch out for throughout the entirety of the season. We could see him be in a lot of trade rumors, and I definitely do think that Ferraro at some point will wind up getting moved by the San Jose Sharks, especially if they're able to get forward help. So very interesting note there. Also remaining with David Pagnotta, he mentioned talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, that the Leafs have talked to Jarnkrok about a potential trade. And while Jarnkrok has not officially requested a trade, he is not opposed to being dealt. So very interesting note there. So I do think Jarnkrok could wind up being dealt. Now, the Toronto Maple Leafs do have some cap space, so I wouldn't be one bit surprised if the Leafs kept Jarnkrok on this team to start the season if they weren't going to have any more major upgrades. And maybe closer to a trade deadline, if they have someone in mind who they want to try and target, he's a little bit more money, they could try and move Jarnkrok to that team. I think Jarnkrok's entering the final year of his deal, or he's got this year and one more season left at a $2.1 million cap hit, so it's not a cheap contract by any means, but Jarnkrok's a decent middle six guy. If he can stay healthy, which was a big problem for him last year, he can be an effective forward, can put up like 15 to 20 goals, 40 points, somewhere around there. So I do think he could wind up being a very solid add for a whole bunch of different teams. So I do think Jarnkrok is a very likely chance to get moved. I think if the Leafs could have someone in mind who they really want to try and target before the season starts, they could try and move Jarnkrok to create a little bit more cap space. But at this point in time, I don't think it would be too surprising if Jarnkrok starts the season on the Leafs roster, and then at some point during the season he gets dealt to free up some cap space for the Leafs to go after someone else. So very interesting note there. But the Toronto Maple Leafs have talked to Jarnkrok, according to Pagnotta, about a potential deal. And while he hasn't requested a trade, apparently it does seem like Jarnkrok will be open to a fresh start, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to the Seattle Kraken, according to Jeff Marek, he was mentioning the Seattle Kraken, and he says that McCann may not be in the Kraken's long-term plans. He says that he still expects Jason Botterlli to do some more movement and do some more tweaking to the Seattle Kraken roster, and he still says to watch out for Jared McCann because he does wonder that with the Kraken's current timeline, McCann may not be a part of this Kraken's team's future. So McCann, like I talked about in previous videos, he's been the best Seattle Kraken player since the expansion draft. Like, he was a fantastic pickup. He's the Seattle Kraken's version of William Karlsson. Like, he's been a very fantastic player. But he's got 2 years left on his contract this upcoming season and next year, making just over $5 million. He's a really solid player, but if this team doesn't really see themselves as a playoff team over the next year or two, and they feel like McCann's really not going to help them a whole bunch beyond the next 2 years, I could see them move him. Now, I think it'll definitely confirm them going in the direction of a seller or a rebuilding type team, but I definitely do think that if they were to move McCann, they could get a really solid haul, like 1 year or 1.5 years at $5 million, whether they trade him next offseason or closer to trade deadline this year. Like, I think there will be a lot of teams who have some interest. I think the Kraken could get like a first round pick, solid prospect, and maybe even something else for Jared McCann, especially if they were to move him this year to give the team who's acquiring him 2 playoff runs with him. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Like, personally, I don't think McCann should be dealt by the Seattle Kraken because he's such a valuable piece of the Seattle Kraken team. But if he's on the long-term plans, they don't view themselves as a playoff team, I can see why they would potentially have some opportunity to trade him. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But keep your eye on Jared McCann. He's going to be a very interesting name to watch out for. I don't think he'll be moved before the season starts, but heading into the season and potentially closer to trade deadline, I definitely do think we could see a Jared McCann move. So I'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to Greg Wysinski, he was talking about the St. Louis Blues, and he personally thinks, not any rumors or anything, he personally thinks that the reason why Kyrou was mentioned so much in a trade rumor mill was because the Blues were sort of gauging the trade interest for him. He says that if the Blues were really intent on trying to move him before his no movement clause kicks in, they probably would have already have moved him. So Wysinski thinks that they're sort of trying to get feelers out for Kyrou, maybe sort of make plans to move him later on. Like, I still think Kyrou's a solid player, 25 to 30 goal scorer, 70, 75 point player. He's a very solid top 6 forward. I know that he's starting to get up there in age at 26, 27 years old, but he's still a younger type forward. So I would be still quite surprised if they move Kyrou. Now, he also has a no trade clause, so he dictates where he's going to go if he is to get dealt, and apparently there's still some interest in Montreal. But I do agree with Wysinski that if they did really want to move Kyrou before his no movement clause kicked in, they probably would have. So I definitely do think there's a very interesting move here that Kyrou could still get dealt. I personally don't see it happening because of how big of a player Kyrou is for that St. Louis Blues team, but if the Blues really want to move that contract and aren't overly fond of paying Kyrou $8.1 million, I definitely could see that wind up happening. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on Jordan Kyrou, as apparently there's still some speculation out there that he could end up getting moved, and Wysinski definitely thinks that they're sort of trying to put feelers out there, gauge the interest from Kyrou instead of actually dealing him before his no movement clause kicked in. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's all I'm talking for today. I left your guys' thoughts. What do you think of all we discussed here today? Do the Sharks move Ferraro? Could it be closer to trade deadline, and could it be for some forward help? Do the Leafs move Jarnkrok? Could be before the start of the season, or is it some point in the season? Do you think the Seattle Kraken will move Jared McCann in the very near future? And does Kyrou get moved? Definitely your thoughts on all of that, plus the news updates and the signing updates from our past couple of days. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and if you're liking to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I'll link to that down in the description below. Can't always see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.